Thank you for this invitation and this opportunity to be with you. What we are going to do this morning briefly is tell you a little bit about who we are, share a few stories, and then leave you with a thought as something to take with you today. My name is Al Sturgeon. I am a Christian. 3 things that I particularly love about my religion. Number 1, I love that love is at the center of the religion. Probably the most famous verse. You see it on posters at football games. John 3:16 says, God loved the world so much that he gave his only begotten son. And that son, Jesus, the namesake for Christianity, whenever he was asked, what's the most important thing? What's the most important thing? He said, it's love, to love God with all your heart. And there's a second, to love your neighbor as yourself. Love is at the center of the religion that I follow. Number 2, I love that those who follow Christianity are called to be ministers of reconciliation. Specifically, it says that God was reconciling the world to himself through Jesus, and those who follow him are called to be ministers of reconciliation. Of all the divisions, all the lines, all of the social structures in our world, we're called to be people to bridge those gaps. I love that about our religion. I love that Jesus was one who walked across those lines and continually reached across lines that divided. Number 3, I love that Christianity is a religion that proclaims hope. That it looks backward, but only looks backward to look forward to what is to come. On the doors of our church office up on Upper Campus, where you go by Starbucks and Elkins, you'll see our doors there, and we have the words living hope on those doors right now, quoting 1 Peter 1, verse 3, that says, praise be to God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he's given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus. Mine is a religion that looks forward to a day when there's a new heaven and a new earth and no more suffering, and all of the problems that we see now are gone away. We look that direction. And yet, with those 3 things that I love, I still struggle today. I struggle personally, but I also struggle just on reflection of the state of our world, our culture. It's not new, but it feels tough. And in fact, I realize that I'm in a country where the majority religion still is Christianity, and yet it's even among Christians that instead of love, at times I hear animosity, maybe hatred. And instead of seeing reconciliation take place, I witness divisions and camps forming. And instead of hope, I hear, even from myself at times and from friends, I hear despair, and I wonder, what's the future going to be like? It's the sort of things I think about.
Thank you for your presence. My name is Sukhsimranjit Singh. Sukh means happiness or prosperity. Simr means remembering someone is above you or staying humble. And Jeet means win. Last name is Singh, given to all Sikh men by our last guru. I'm a Sikh, Sikhism, one of the younger religions in the world. And I'm standing here very proud in front of you in a Christian institution. I'm a faculty member and managing director. This is my story. 3 things about Sikhism that I will share with you. 1, kirt karna. It means work hard. Without hard work, there is no life. There is no shortcut. Number 2, naam japna. To me, Sikhism represents self-reflection, meditation. And to be better outside, you need to look inwards and see how can I improve constantly. In fact, the very symbol I'm wearing today, the turban, that some of you may not realize what it is, called pag or the star in Punjabi, why one wears. It's not to show religion. It is to remind oneself constantly that you have to walk a higher path. It's to stay humble, because the very word Sikh means learner. The 3rd principle I want to share with you is Vandke Chakna, which means sharing. To our faith and how we see other faiths, sharing is what brings us together. Sharing equals happiness. And like my wonderful friend and colleague Al Sturgeon, I'm also suffering. Everything about my faith talks about peace building, bringing people together. I head an institute that talks about resolving conflict. Yet we see conflict all around us. Yet we have terms like red and blue. And yet we have division that at least is shown to us constantly. The question remains today, what can we learn about these struggles? And can we come together?
Let me make sure I heard you correctly. What I hear when I hear you talk about your faith, Professor Singh, is that there's a combination of mind and action, that it's not just about reflecting on a certain thing or believing a certain set of beliefs, but it shows itself in the way that you work and the way that you share. Am I getting that right?
Yes, Mr. Sturgeon. It is about thinking deeply about how can each one of us contribute.
Very good, very good. Do you remember, what do you remember about the time we first met and spent some time together?
I remember I had the pleasure of taking or bringing Mr. Al Sturgeon with me to India. This was in May, 2 years ago. And I remember being with Mr. Sturgeon in India, and I remember a long journey on a single lane road up to a place called Shimla. If you haven't traveled to India and that part of the world, it could be very scary or a dangerous thing to do. But I remember having a conversation with you, and in that conversation, I felt like I'm with a brother. I felt like with a person who I can share anything with, who I connected with. I don't think I remember that I was with a Christian or with a white man. I do think I remember that I was with a very wise man and a good friend. That's what I remember. Mr. Sturgeon, what do you remember about your trip to India?
I remember, and you should know this, that it's 1,000 degrees in Delhi in May, which is when we went to the Taj Mahal, and which was beautiful. But one of the things that stuck out to me, one day we were at a school, much like this, and it was a big crowd, and Professor Singh was about to speak, and they said we were due in court to speak at a high court, and they asked me to go on ahead in case you didn't make it there on time. And I remember being terrified because I had no idea what I would say or what I would be saying, but thankfully you made it in time, and I will always remember when Professor Singh stood up to speak, and the audience was filled with lawyers from India, people that he would have grown up with, and I remember the respect that they had for you, and I remember the passion with which you spoke. In the way that they hung on your every word and wanted to hear what you had to say. What he didn't tell you is when we went up high in the mountains in Shimla, the last morning we were in the Himalayas and we got up to leave, and I don't know if it was the Indian food or the elevation or both, but without going into graphic description, I wasn't doing well that morning whenever I woke up, and it was not pretty. There was nothing pretty happening that morning. And yet, it was time for us to drive hours down a mountain, more hours across to Delhi, to wait for hours for a 24-hour trip home. And I remember the hospitality that Professor Singh showed to me, the care that he gave to me on the journey along the way. But listen to this, and then we're in the airports. And Professor Singh wearing his turban, I remember the looks he got. Always remember the way that security and the way that fellow travelers would look. And I thought, here's a man that has such respect and such passion and is such tender-hearted and caring for me. And yet, I remember the way people looked at you.
Yes.
What's it been like for you at Pepperdine?
I think when people look at me at airports, I think they're thinking, wow, how does he wear that? I want to learn how to wear it.
Oh, that was probably it.
I think that's exactly what people are thinking. You know, what does color mean to him? You know, pink or blue or, wow, I think that's what people are thinking. And you know, I want to say one thing in conclusion and before answering your question, if that's okay, Mr. Sturgeon, and that is, I didn't like one thing about taking Mr. Sturgeon to India. That is my father, who's the president of a university in India. Whenever I talk to him in a week or, you know, you don't talk to your dad every day, we hope, right? But every week or so, and the first or second thing my father asked me is, how's Mr. Sturgeon doing? And I'm like, did you ask me how I am doing? So that's one thing I didn't like about taking Mr. Sturgeon. That's the impression he made in India. The question is, how is Pepperdine to me? You know, friends, I came to Pepperdine not knowing what it would be like to be in a Christian institution. And as a Sikh man, I care, you can clearly see, about my own faith, but I'm also very respectful and open to other faiths. And I have a deep respect for my Christian brothers and sisters. To me, it was a big deal that Pepperdine invited me. Please apply. Let's see if this can be a place for you. And I'm very proud to say in the last 2 years, I've actually made more friends at Pepperdine than I've made at other institutions where I've been 8+ years within US. It is, to me, in some ways, we all have a joint mission. In some ways, it's beautiful to belong to that faith, that commitment, that respect, that students, faculty, staff, everybody gives you. So I feel home. Let me ask you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
How is it like you to be at Pepperdine?
Well, as a white Christian man, it's really hard for me to be here. I don't see anyone like me anywhere I go. No, I would say that I don't know what my expectations were when I came to Pepperdine a little over 10 years ago, but what I've loved about Pepperdine is been a place where I meet you. It's been a place where I've been invited and welcomed into interfaith dialogue that I hadn't experienced really before. It's been a place where I have learned and grown in my faith, not because my faith to the exclusion of someone else's faith, but as I listen and as I learn and as I experience, it helps me understand what I believe more fully and more deeply. And and I guess in the middle of the struggles that we talked about earlier, of the concerns we see when we look around us, it's actually been a place where it's allowed me to see hope and to be able to understand what things might be like.
As the director of the Strauss Institute, the institute that ranks very high in the nation in dispute resolution, it's a privilege for me to see students from Seaver, from law, from business, to come to Pepperdine who have this curiosity and vision and who want to change the world. And I think together we can. So I'm very privileged to be part of that Pepperdine experience.
Good. Do we have a closing word for the audience?
We are suffering in some ways. We're together in some ways, and it's amazing to be together. What if you ask me next time why you wear what you're wearing? What if we ask each other, what's your religion? What's your name? Can I know you? What if we are in a country, in a place where we don't judge people with their political affiliation, with their gender, with the color of their skin, but with the smile, with their heart, with their spirit, with their character, with their integrity? So what if it's the question, what if I am in an airport and people come up to me and being nice instead of worried that I'm going to do something stupid? So I have that question. I have that question, and I have hope. My Christian brothers like Al Sturgeon brings me hope. People like you who are here bring me hope.
I would just invite us to use our imaginations this morning. Can you imagine what a world might look like when everyone is treated with inherent dignity and respect? Can you imagine a place where people do look at each other as brothers and sisters? I think back to Dr. King and his words, and the words that he used more than anything were words like brotherhood, not just freedom, justice, equality, those things, but can we begin to see each other as family? And if we can imagine that, can we imagine that beginning with ourselves? And therefore, can we imagine that beginning here? And can we imagine this institution as a place that sends people out in the world as light in a world that at times gravitates toward darkness? I try each week to come down here and sit in Wednesday Chapel with you and be a part of this community. And I know that each week we close with a prayer. But today, instead of closing with what you think of as a formal prayer, what we've just shared, that is our prayer for you. So may we truly go in peace. You're dismissed.